tracks on this car. Beat tracks on this car.
But they know every time I get up in the backseat I blow. Even though I'm away to myself, so what the fuck am I supposed to do when I go? Gotta get a little bit of open before they grab me by my shirt and throw me at the door. Now these motherfuckers wanna tell me I'm whole. Sitting in the motherfucking cell and I'm waiting. Reach for my sock, got a blunt and I'm baking. Every single person in the building they can taste it. Pigs looking at me like I'm doing something crazy. Person in myself, the doctor and tasting. I don't give a fuck, I'm so high I can taste it.
Smoking, smoking, choking, choking on the throat. Who the boss in this bitch? Don't act like you ain't know. Blowing, blowing, smoking, smoking, choking, choking on the throat. Who the boss in this?
Beat tracks on this car. Beat tracks on this car. Like it's tough, but they know every time I get up in the backseat I blow. Even though I'm away to myself, so what the fuck am I supposed to do when I go? Gotta get a little bit of open before they grab me by my shirt and throw me at the door. Now these motherfuckers wanna tell me I'm whole. Sitting in the motherfucking cell and I'm waiting. Reach for my sock, got a blunt and I'm baking. Every single person in the building they can taste it. Pigs looking at me like I'm doing something crazy. Person in myself, the doctor and tasting. I don't give a fuck, I'm so high I can taste it.
Smoking, smoking, choking, choking on the throat. Who the boss in this bitch? Don't act like you ain't know. Blowing, blowing, smoking, smoking, choking, choking
DJ rock, let the beat bang.
Only if I had one more. Check out the sound. I'm bigger than before, it is loud and kick it.
Tonight's show is going to be slightly different from the rest. I'm feeling very philosophical tonight. So, but make no mistake, this connects with everything that we have been speaking about because what is coming is going to test your character and who you are. And in order to face that obstacle and those challenges to come, you need to know exactly who you are. Stay tuned to find out. All right. Good evening and aloha ma'ahana pono. So tonight we ask a question that surprisingly you don't have an answer to because no one does. And that question is who are you? So we get this concept, this idea, and this notion of self from a lot of different things. One of it is our literature, right? Our ideas that have been put onto paper. Rene Descartes was a French philosopher, and he had a very famous saying that has formulated and constructed this illusion of self. And that saying is, I think, therefore I am. Essentially, what you think you are, you are. What you perceive yourself to be, you are. And that concept is completely and utterly false. And I'll tell you why. When I ask you the question, hey, sweet, how are we doing? Who are you? What answer do you give? Because that's not a simple question. We treat it like a simple question. When I ask you who you are, what do you reply with? Most people reply with a name. Well, my name is Joe Dokes. My name is John Doe. My name is Jane Doe. But you see, your name is not who you are. Your name is what people call you to get your attention. Your name was given to you by your parents. And even if you've chosen your own name, it's simply a tool of mechanism to grab your attention, but it's not who you are. It's just a title. I ask you who you are, people will say, well, I'm a doctor, or I'm a nurse, I'm a farmer, I'm a prepper, I'm a homesteader, I'm a Republican. Well, those are things that you believe in. Those are things that you do. Those are not who you are. They do not define you, yet we allow them to. No, that's not who you are either. So when I ask you who you are, you might give me an abstraction or a concept. I am a spirit of consciousness that's encapsulated by a body of meat and veins and blood. And that's merely the concept that you have created to define something that you have no answer to. It's not who you are either. So when I ask you who you are, you might say something ridiculous like, I am just experiencing this, and I'm just this, and I'm just that. And all of those things are exactly what you're not, because you have just plucked it out of reality, out of fantasy, out of thin air, to try to sound whimsical by giving an answer that you don't have an answer to. So when I ask you who you are, all of the ways that we respond in any culture is wrong. You see, you don't know who you are. Not really. And when I say that, and I've had conversations about this with people, the first response I get is, well, wait a minute. Well, you don't know me. You don't know who I am. Of course, I know who I am. I know what I've been through. I know what I've done. I know what I think, and I know what I feel. I know who I am. Really? Well, let's break that down. First concept of the personality, right? What does it mean to be a person? When someone says that you ought to be a genuine person, they mean that you need to have a consistent character. They mean that you need to always act in the same way across the board to every situation, to every emotion. Because if you don't, then you're having an inconsistent character, and then there's a flaw with your character. But what does person mean? What does the word mean? Remember, I've talked about how words are spells, and spells are powerful. What does the word person mean? Well, it comes from the Greek word persona. And in the Greco Roman plays of the Golden Age of Greece, especially in Athens, whenever they would put on a play, a theater, someone would come on before the show and would announce the list of the personas that would be portrayed in these plays. And the personas was the masks that the people wore. You see, persona just meant mask, just meant a personality, a personification of a concept. So when someone says that you ought to be a genuine person, what they're really saying without even realizing is you ought to be a real fake. Because we have had our personality shaped from us from the time that we were born. You see, from the time that you were born, your parents, your teachers, your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, your preachers, your priests are all eager to tell you who you are, to shape you, and to organize your belief system in such a way that you think that it originates from you. But just like your personality, it's unique, yes, but it is shaped by everyone around you. You are a reflection of the people that raised you. And you go through your entire life with all of these ideas and these belief systems that did not originate with you. You weren't born a Republican. You weren't born a Christian. You weren't born anything. You just simply exist. When you are a child, a baby, there is this phenomenon called the oceanic view. And what that means is that at that stage of your life, you cannot distinguish between yourself and the world around you. As far as you're concerned, you are it and it is you. And it's only as you get older do you get taught hate? Do you get taught bias? Do you get taught bigotry? Do you get taught all of these negative things that we work the rest of our lives trying to get rid of? And yet we don't even know where they come from. Well, they come from our parents. They come from our friends. They don't come from ourselves originally. We imprint onto one another on a constant basis. Your personality is like a dewdrop on a multidimensional spider web. And in the face of that singular dewdrop is a reflection of all of the other infinite millions and trillions and billions and whatever number you want to come up with of other dewdrops that are also on that multidimensional spider web. And you are also in the reflection of all of those other dewdrops. So we are all reflections of one another. We define each other. We allow each other to define our character and habits. For an example, if you're a woman, say you find a pair of jeans that you're comfortable in and you go out and your friends criticize you saying how fat you look or how bad they look on you. And I don't care how much you tell the world and tell yourself that you don't care what people think. You wouldn't be human if that was true. How often do we let the negativity of other people sway and affect our own way of life? You might throw out that pair of jeans because you don't want the ridicule, even though you feel good in them. You see, you have allowed people to change your character. You have allowed people to sway your opinion of yourself. And we do that on a daily basis across all spectrums, good, bad, and ugly. So when I ask you, who are you? You are an amalgamation of ideas and thoughts, half of which probably don't even come from you. You see, in Hindu philosophy, there is this concept called the great Maya. And Maya means several things, but it predominantly means illusion. It means magic. it means theater. And that is to say that all of life is a theater, it's an act, it's a game. You are taught how to be a good person, are you not? You're coached, you're trained. You're taught which words are appropriate and which words are not. You are punished for bad acts and you are rewarded for good acts. So all of life is a theater, and you're taught to find your role in that theater. That theater is society. Your parents tell you that you ought to be a good person and have a consistent character and find something that you're good at and do that. Contribute to society. Find your place in this world. You see, it's just a beautiful mess of a theater. It's all a game. We play these games in life, and we don't even know that they're games. The whole concept of society and life is a great game. However, the first rule of this game is that it's not a game. It's serious. This is real. You need to take it as such. You see, nobody likes to be laughed at. Nobody likes to be told that something that they're taking serious isn't that serious at all. It's like that famous saying that people always say that usually pisses you off more is don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Because to you, it is a mountain. To them, it's a molehill. And that's why you have the argument, because of the disconnect between what is important to them and what is important to you. You see, one of the biggest things that we do in life that takes up so much of our energy is we try to control other people. We try to control situations that are out of our control. You have no control. You are guaranteed one thing after you come into this world, that you are going to someday die. And what happens in between that is all chance. It's all happenstance. It's all just a bunch of wiggly lines. There's no guarantee for any of that. What you do with that time is dependent upon you, but it's also dependent upon your environment. There are no guarantees. There is no control. You can barely control yourself. How often do you respond in a way that you shouldn't have because you let your emotions get the better of you? Happens all the time. It's human. But yet we have this notion that if we demand enough, and if we stern talk enough, and if we try to convince enough, that we can get people to do what we want them to do. And that's called having expectations. And what are expectations but premeditated resentments? Because what you doing is that you are superimposing yourself on somebody else in the hopes that they're going to act and think and predict what they're going to do just because you want them to do what you want them to do. And see, they're their own human being. They're their own person. And see, it never works out quite that way for us. And instead of being angry at ourselves, it's easier to be angry at that person or someone else, right? So we can't answer who we are because we don't remember who we were before we were told who we were. Who were you when you were born? Did you even exist? What do you believe in? You see, that we don't have a memory of what happened before we were born. And most humans believe that this human experience is just a flash of consciousness between two eternal darknesses. That you didn't exist before you were born, and that you won't exist after you die. It doesn't matter what faith you believe in, or if you have no faith at all. This, who I am, what you see on your computer screen, when I die, it expires. This part of me is gone. It'll never come back. You see, we don't have any memory of who we are before we were born. And here's the secret. There's no need to have a memory of it. Memory only exists in humanity. A lion does not stay awake at night, worried and feeling guilty of the gazelle that it killed earlier in the day. It has no memory of that. It needs no memory of it. It's a human thing, memory. And there comes the concept of self, because only memory can fuel self. Only memory can fuel your idea of who you are. And what you are is as simple as this. You are this tiny little spot back of your brain right here, that is called conscious attention. And in that conscious attention is where all of your feelings and all of your thoughts come from. This little part of your brain that thinks it's the whole thing. Now, are you a body or do you have a body? Which one is it? You can say as a human being that I am at least my body and that everything outside of me is most definitely not me. Right? So you can say that, and then you can say, well, all these other people that have these little egos in their bodies, they're different and separate, but they're like me, but everything else is completely unlike me. The trees are unlike me. The sky is unlike me. Stardust is unlike me. You see, we are fueled by this thing called the idea of self, the I center, the ego, the illusion, the construct, the abstraction. That is Vincent Kennard. That is Sweet Liberty. That is anyone else. It's just ideas. Yet that little part thinks it's everything. And here's the problem with your conscious attention. Here's why we have so much ignorance in the world. I think ignorance is not the right word to use. It's more of ignorance. You ignore things. You see, ignorance is not stupidity. A lack of knowledge is just that. A lack of knowledge is ignorance. You don't know it. But it's because you've ignored it. Because if you wanted to learn that knowledge, you would have. But you've ignored it. And so we have ignorance of all the things around us that do not matter to us. It's just like I had this description about this webcam. Now, this webcam only has a certain perspective. It can't see anything outside of here, and it can't see anything outside of here. Now, according to this webcam, it doesn't exist. There's no space out here. There's no space out here. Because it's not paying attention to it. You see, our limited consciousness is like a radar on a ship. Now, it is programmed and designed to ping certain things like rocks and other ships, but it ignores the vast amount of space in between. Now, is that space empty? No. It's just not paying attention to it. And that is the human consciousness, based off of what we have been taught and based off of who we surround ourselves on and around, shapes what is important to us and what is not important to us. And so it is absolutely human to be myopic in the way that we see life. And that is why no person has any foundation for any argument on this planet, because nobody actually knows everything about everything. That's something called omnipotent. And if you knew everything about everything, you would be God. I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to do a little simulation in your head. I want you to draw a circle in your mind. Doesn't matter how big, but not small. Now, this circle, in this circle, represents the whole of human knowledge, all there is to know about everything that has ever been up until this moment. And I want you to color in that circle. What percentage of that knowledge that you think that you know, or that you know, how smart you are, how much you've remembered, how much you've learned in your life. What do you think that percentile is? You think it's a percent? 1%, 2%? It's not 100%, because you would be omnipotent. I would say the smartest person on the planet, or the smartest person that has ever existed, could maybe fill in 2%. That's a lot of knowledge. So in that 98% that you don't know, you can pretty much say for every one thing you know, there's an infinite amount of things you don't. So what are you actually an expert on? This is where arguments come from. This is where division and diversions come from. Because when you argue, what is really happening is one ego is saying to the other ego that my opinion is better than yours, and that you ought to believe in my opinion, because if you don't, well, then you're a ism, you're a phobe, you're an ist, you're an insert label to demagogue them, simply because they don't agree with what you think is going on in this world. And so, in that scenario, that 98%, right? Well, that's all of human knowledge. Well, what about what's outside of that circle that you drew? What about the person who thought of the circle? What about the room that that person's in? What about the street that that house is on? What about the state that that street is in? What about the country? What about the world? You see, our human knowledge is just that. It's artificial. We created it. We created that sphere of knowledge. All of that sphere of knowledge is simply what humans have thought up. And being that we have egos, and being that we tend to think that we're separate from nature, we have made the grand mistake of assuming that because we think this way, the rest of the world will think this way. The rest of the universe will think this way. If you think that mathematics is a universal language, you don't understand language. Mathematics is not a universal language. Mathematics is a human language. There is no natural three in the universe. Show me where a three exists. It doesn't. We made them up. They're just angles. That's all numbers are. They were created in Arabia. And they're just angles. 1 is 1 angle. 2 is 2 angles. 3 is 3 angles. 4 is 4 angles. When you draw it, it's 4 angles. When you draw it, it's 5 angles. That's where we got it from. It's not universal. We created math in the same way that we created English, in the same way that we created Latin, in the same way that we created complex language to begin with, the same way that we created writing. It's just coming from us. Yet we think in terms that we're the center of the universe, because as far as we know, we are. We haven't had someone officially fly down in front of the White House, get out of their ship and says, "Greetings, I come in peace." We haven't had that happen yet. So how myopic humanity is to begin with. And see, we forget this very easily because we're taught to forget this, that we are not the end all, be all of everything. You as a human being, as an individual, is not the end all, be all of knowledge and information. You're so limited to what you know that it's not even funny. I'm so limited to what I know. If I could fill in that, I could maybe fill in 0.5%, and that's being honest. And I know a lot of stuff. I'm very smart. According to this society, according to the IQ test, I have an IQ of 134. Very smart, right? I know my shit. It doesn't matter. Socrates says that I know not. The more knowledge you learn, the more you realize that you will never know everything about everything, and that knowledge is pointless because it's all made up. It's all made up to explain this thing that we call life. Every word that we have ever created is nothing more than a label and a title and a description to that label and title so that we can understand it, process it, make it a constant, and move on to the next. That's how the human brain works. We see things in numbers. We see things in boxes. We see things in shapes. We put people in boxes every day. We label them as people of different mindsets. If they don't agree with you, if they're a Republican and you're a Democrat, well, you've labeled them a Republican and you've put them in an artificial box. They've labeled you a Democrat and have put you in an artificial box. It doesn't matter. It's artificial. It's an illusion. It's just egos being egos. You see, we have two different types of concepts that gets thrown around a lot, especially today. You have people who wake up. So when you wake up, and then you have the people that are awakened. They're not the same thing. You see, when you wake up to something, it means you open your eyes. It means you see something in front of you finally. It's probably been there this whole time. And you connect dots that you probably didn't allow yourself to connect before. That's not awakened. Awakened is to emphasize nirvana, is to emphasize enlightenment. To be awakened means that you become a joker and not a funny ha-ha joker. You become a joker, like a joker in the deck of cards. You see, a joker is wild. He can play any role. He can be a she. She can be an it. Can be a 1, can be a 7, can be a king or a queen. A joker can play any role. And that's what it means to be awakened, is you realize all of life is a role. It's a theater. And you get the giggles. And I find it funny when people online take the energy to want to like troll you. It's like, I find it funny. And people don't like to be laughed at. Again, this life, the first rule of this game of life is it's not a game. So if you can't answer the question of who you are, what do you do? How do you prepare? How do you test something that you don't even know exists? You see, you're relying on your experience. You're relying on your memory of who you are. But they're just that. They're just memories. So the better question isn't who you are, it's what you are. And you are that which to which there is no witcher. You're it. Your entire existence is evoked from you. Did you know that? Everything around you, the way you perceive life, the way you experience life, it all comes from you. It's all generated from a projection screen in your neurological hardwiring back here in the back of your brain. You see, this is all just neurological phenomenon. It's just wavelengths, particle waves, and wavely particles. And the way your eyes work in the back of your brain, they have the receptors. And those receptors intake this neurological phenomenon and it generates an image and then it projects it back out through your eyes. Our eyes are the same as the headlights of a car, right? The headlights show the way, but all this wiring in the background has to be powered for those lights to be on. See, it doesn't perceive everything behind itself. Behind our brain, behind here, see, I can no longer see here. I can on this screen, but this doesn't exist to me. I'll never be able to see it with my own 2 eyes. I can see it through a reflection. So this world back here will never exist to me. It doesn't matter what direction I leave. The moment I turn my sphere of things, it fades out of reality because I'm no longer there to observe it. And if I'm not there to observe it, it does not exist to me. Now, the moment I hear a sound, well, that falls under the one of the 5 senses that defines our realities. Therefore, it's observable. Someone touches me, it's observable. But if nothing, no sound, no touch, no hearing, no tasting, no seeing, it doesn't exist. So what we are is simple and complicated, right? And I don't have all the answers, and it's just my opinion. And that's what I like to stress with people. I'll get to my comments here in a little bit. But what we are is a part of nature, right? We're not separate from it. We're no more separate from nature than bees are separate from flowers. You see, it's the ego. The ego comes up with the whole concept of self, who you think you are. And again, it is only a very small part of your brain. But back to the point of evoking this all into existence, right? It's all in the back of your brain. You are generating your own reality. You are creating your own existence. You are doing it. So as far as humanity is concerned, each and every person is the center of their own universe. Indeed, you are the center of the universe from your perspective. Take for an example a sphere. Now, any point of a sphere is the center point. Doesn't matter where you turn it. You can take a pin, put it off, boom, and it's the center point. So in that sense, we're all the center of this earth because it's generating from us. We can only experience it from this. But we are reflections of one another. So who you are is who you surround yourself by. Only you can answer that, because it's been tainted by opinion. It's been tainted by experience that's unique to you. That's why we're not all the same, because if we were all raised by the same people, if we all had the same experiences, if we all thought the same, life would be monotonous. There would be no joy in life. There would be no excitement. And you see, human beings love this game called hide and seek. When you knock to get somebody's attention, it's not the knock that will grab your attention, it's the absence of the knock that follows. See, you hear the sound and then the sound goes away, and that's what grabs your attention. Because if that sound was constant, you would eventually fade it out. It's like when you go into a room and you hear a clock ticking. After about 3 or 4 minutes, that sound disappears, doesn't it? Because you've grown accustomed to it as a constant. But that on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off is what grabs human attention. When you see a figure run across the background, you never pay attention to the background because the background is a constant, but you pay attention to the thing that is moving, the thing that is going on and off, on and off, on and off. And that is all of life. So your limited consciousness is literally just formulated by what you pay attention and what knocks the most to you. So, all right, that's my deal is just be prepared and understand what you are is you're part of everything else, right? There is no separation between you and anything else. If you removed man from his environment, he would die. All right, we go together. We can't survive anywhere outside of our environment. You are your environment. You're, if nothing else, the in the same way that an apple tree apples, the earth peoples. The earth produces people, just like a flower produces, a plant produces fruit, right? We grow on this planet. We're part of it, but we don't see it that way because of the ego. And like I said, this ego thinks it's everything. It thinks it's figured it out. We don't know shit. We really don't. We have created a lexicon that defines our reality. And if it doesn't fit in our lexicon, it's not real, and it can't be, because it doesn't fit into the concepts that we have created around us. And that's why humanity is always so unhappy and at odds with themselves, is because they don't know who they are. If you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want. If you don't know who you are, how the hell can you know who anyone else is? Right? We try our best to make sense of the senseless. And that's what life is. It makes no sense. That's a human concept, that things have to make sense. The universe is doing its stuff for the sake of doing its stuff. It doesn't need to make sense. It's just us. It's just what we think. So, all right. Well, welcome, guys. How are we doing? So I'm going to start with Daniel. It's why grounding works so well. Children of the earth need contact with the earth. Yes. So look, a few years ago, I was a run-of-the-mill, egotistical jock asshole. I had money, had a nice job. I had everything that society needed, told me that I needed to be successful and happy, right? I had everything ticked off, except for a family, right? A girlfriend or a wife. And I sacrificed so much of my time to succeed. I didn't have time for people, and I was miserable. I was unhappy in life. And I used to laugh and demagogue hippies for their spiritual bullshit. And I would sometimes try to fight them. I've done martial arts my whole life. Make no mistake. I'm a warrior in a garden. I'm not a gardener in a war. But when I discovered mushrooms and I realized that grounding and connecting with the earth, that's real. It's real, right? When you ground yourself, you connect yourself to your source The earth is the reason why you're alive. It's all in perfect harmony, because if it wasn't, you wouldn't be alive. We wouldn't be able to have these conversations if it wasn't in harmony. Everything works. It's only when we interfere that we disturb that balance. And make no mistake, nature abhors a vacuum. Nature will always find balance. So, you have a leaky faucet. All right. All right. So here's one. I have a myelogram, and that went earlier on. My spinal fluid shot all over. Took me almost a year to walk and talk. Oh, I remember you telling me about that. Yeah, my phone still hasn't activated. I bought a new phone today, and it's been, their servers are so overloaded with new people getting phones, I guess. So, well, anyway, what do you guys think? Do you think I'm just full of shit? I'm gonna light up this cigarette. So yeah, so how that all connects to what I've been talking about. I know look, my channel is a philosophy channel by nature. I got forced into doing this, believe it or not. I'm not doing this to capitalize on crisis. I'm not doing this for followers or subscribers or likes and shares. I'm grateful for everyone that has subscribed, but I always make it clear, not recently, but I don't do it for that. I do it because I am a philosopher, right? You don't need a doctorate. You don't need a piece of paper to be a philosopher. We've lost that in translation. Being a philosopher is not a 9-to-5 job. It's not someone who carries a briefcase in at 9 a.m. and teaches other people's philosophies and dissects what it means and then goes home. Being a philosopher literally means that you see the world completely different. You see the mundane and you question it. You realize that everybody's ideas and how they think is like fashion. There's many different types of fashion. Which fashion is right and which fashion is wrong is subject to your opinion. And a philosopher just explores the opinions of everybody. A philosopher realizes that his opinion or her opinion is not the only opinion. And that's where most human beings stop. And so this is more of a philosophy stream tonight. And this is more of my roots. But it connects because, like I said in the very beginning, you're going to be tested. Your character will be tested. And you need to know who you are. Problem is that we can't answer that. So what you're going to have to rely on is those experiences. Because a crisis does not create character. A crisis reveals character. And you're going to have a lot revealed to you of just exactly what you are versus who you are. And it's going to be a psychological eye-opener for people. Some people will break just from that, and some people will ascend. It's just the way of it. So Athena said she had a sweet harvest over summer, so she's stocked up on all her herbs. That's good. You gonna kiss the bong? I'm kissing my bong right now. Yeah, I have a garden that I started, and it's just now got to where it's warm enough to where I can leave my plants outside. But I've been bringing them in every night to harden them. I'm really excited because this is the first time I've ever succeeded at growing in anything. Sorry. Oh, some good cigarette. All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead. Yeah. Well, that's true. And look, that didn't originate from me. I have no idea who started that, but it's true. A crisis will reveal your character, because what a crisis does is it illuminates all of the bullshit in your life. You see, in a certain way, in regular, ordinary society, things that have gone on, normalcy bias, right? The way things were before, we were just walking around in the dark, right? And you can be whoever you want. You can tell the internet whoever you want. You know, you can create and craft this illusion of yourself. And people can either believe it or not believe it, but they'll never know either way. And when you have a crisis, what it does is it shines a bright light on humanity, and it reveals all of that bullshit. Starts cutting back all of those layers of illusions that you've crafted about being a patriot or being a badass and all this stuff, or being this or being anything. It reveals who you really are, what you really are. It reveals your intentions, and it reveals your goals, and it reveals what's really important to you. And for some people, that's it's not good. For other people, it's great. So for every person that will descend into darkness during these times, there will be someone who ascends to light. There will be someone whose character is revealed to be a shining and guiding light. And those are the people that will get us through this, because we have crafted this illusion that there must always be a battle between good and evil, that the dark must never overtake the light, that the light must win. And that's a terrible way of looking at life. Good will never overcome evil, in the same way that evil will never overcome good. You see, it's what the Japanese call gigemuge, and that is the interpenetration of all events and things. Everything is defined by everything else. What is good if you do not have bad to compare it to? What is bad if you do not have good to compare it to? Good defines bad, bad defines good. They need each other. They are mutual and not exclusive. If good triumphed, you wouldn't know what good was anymore. It would be monotonous. It wouldn't be a victory. You wouldn't know what victory was, because you only know what victory is if you know what defeat is. You see where I'm going? There's no opposition. They go together, just like a front goes together with the back, right? So she says she's so glad I do these shows. I get mental concert in my head. So I am getting burnt out on the news. Yeah, look, I have to plug away from the news, because is important as it is to keep up, it's riddled with fear and fear porn. You see, we haven't changed our habits over the last 12 years. We've intensified them. Ever since 9/11, we have lived in a state of fear porn, panic, anxiety, and distrust that has been fed to us through media, through political parties, through movies, through Hollywood, through novels, through everything. We are taught not to trust one another. See. Thank goodness I have many movies and TVCs on DVD. I figured they'd probably keep us home beyond the 8th. Look, we'll get into that in another show. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and end this here. I really appreciate you guys coming with me. I'm going to, I think it's contagious. But I'm gonna play an outro for you guys. It's a music video that my best friend, this is a freestyle video that he recorded a couple years ago. So I'm gonna play that for you for the outro music, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Aloha, mahana pono.
Some kind of dream that I don't understand. understand, my friend. Come and say that you don't mean to hurt me now. But my heart's broken on the ground. And where do you go on to explain what you meant by the name when you called it out to me? Oh, I see you run. Or do I see you run? Are my enemies under me? Are my enemies under the sun? Oh, what was I to say? Where was I to be? At the time you fell, my friend, it's heaven or hell. Wasn't much I could do. You see, if I could go back again, Lord knows I'd see it through. But there I stand alone with empty hands. What do you want? Oh, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to say? It's so far beyond me. Somehow I've been crazy, wandering alone. What do you wanna do now? Where do you wanna go? I had to use my mind for kindling in the fire. Lord knows I would have froze to death that weary night. And nobody blazed the trail, I was on my own and wondering why my heart is so cold. Lord, would you please tell me why? Oh, why my heart is so cold. Stay on the seat. Na, 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 na. So far from heaven's gate, you tell me sanctuary waits. These demons' wings that I fly, tonight my nightmares will come to life. When my journey ends, I'll open my eyes again, may you breathe, as if my friends have to throw me